one of the quickest ways that you are going to book appointments for your agency is through cold calling. Now, this works whether you are a new agency, whether you are established already, but if you can cut through the anxiety and the sort of cringiness that you might get when it comes to doing cold calls, then you're going to book a lot of appointments. And once you've actually done that, of course, you need to know what to say and how to really say it, because this is one of the most important things, of course. And so I've done thousands of cold calls now. We used to actually exclusively book appointments for our agency through cold calls. So I have a lot of experience with this, managing cold calls myself and actually doing the calls myself. And so I have a series of tips that I'm going to go through in this video that I have no doubt if you implement and actually learn these and, put these into your cold calling system, then you're going to book a lot of appointments very, very fast. So if you're not familiar with me, my name's Ben Lister, and I help agency owners by documenting all of my learnings that I have on this YouTube channel that help me to make about multi-six figures per year. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that saying certain things, there's a bit of a obsession or a bit of a thing around, what lines to say. Now, this can be important, and I'll explain why this is important in a little bit, but the most important thing is actually how you are speaking. If you are saying a perfect script, a golden script, but you are saying it in a way that it makes you seem unconfident, makes you seem like you don't really know what you're talking about, like you haven't done this before, then it's not going to work. People are going to see that very, very early on. I'm sure if you had a call from someone who was stuttering, they obviously weren't nervous, right? They were kind of fluffing their lines all around, then you wouldn't want to trust this person to build your business, right? For whatever service that is they're selling, because if someone is able to articulate themselves correctly, then you have a lot of respect for them. In the same capacity, if someone is not able to articulate themselves correctly, then you kind of lose respect for them. If you look at your favorite YouTubers, your favorite rappers, for example, these guys, oftentimes the way that they are saying the words is much more important than what they are actually saying. There's a lot of people out there who have YouTube channels who kind of just say a whole bunch of nothing, or if they do say something, it's very, very surface level, but they speak with great articulation. They are very slow with their words. They are people who you could probably listen to all day long without actually having to understand what they're saying, and it just sounds good, right? It just sounds, because they're super confident that what they're saying is actually true. And I'm sure you can think of people in your life or on YouTube or anything like that where they talk very, very well, they have a lot of confidence, but you don't really agree with what they're saying. But sometimes they have a really big audience, right? People agree with them all the time, and it's just because of the way that they're saying this. So when you jump on a call, if you are stuttering, hi, is that Steve? It's not going to work, right? It's just not going to cut it out. But if you jump on a call and you say, hey, is this Steve? Steve, I've been looking forward to calling you all day long. My name is blah, blah, blah. And then you could go on, right? If you have that kind of tone, if you are actually saying your script in that way where you are making some words shorter, making some words longer, you are emphasizing certain words, then how on earth is this person not going to think that this person has some charisma and confidence? They must be selling something, or they must have something to say, which is super, super important. And this is how you keep people on the phone, because they're super interested to see like what the hell is going on here, right? But if you on the phone with someone who is stuttering and they're quiet and they're not actually confident, then it's just not going to work, right? And you're always going to think that this person is trying to sell you something, or whatever they have to sell is just not interesting. And even though the way that you say something is kind of the 80-20 when it comes to a cold call, the thing that you say is, of course, actually important, right? Especially the first few lines. So the way that I like to think about a cold calling script is that if you imagine, I've got the first line, the second line, the third line, and then I go into some questions or something like that. The first line's job is to get someone to listen to the second line, right? Because there's no guarantee that the person is going to stay on the phone, or they are just not going to hang up, or just straight away just going to say, I'm not interested straight away. So the first line has to lead you onto the second line. The second line has to lead them onto the third line, and then so on and so forth, right? And there is ways to actually track this, so you are actually making good decisions when it comes to your cold call script. So if you track how many people got to line 1, line 2, line 3, you can see, for example, if there's a big drop off after line 2, after line 3, that maybe line 2 or line 3 isn't working, right? Whatever it may be. And so you can start to see that. And so this is what I would always do. I would always track like the certain words, or if I have like a different opening line, I would track how many people would actually be interested in what I have to say, how many people would actually want to go on free on that first line. But if you are going into your calls with that same, I'm going to be honest with you, this is a cold call, like everyone who's ever watched that Thomas Gunny video that went to like 1 million views or whatever it was, then it's probably not going to work. Because I would probably guess that if you are in any sort of niche where, there's probably a lot of people doing this, like home improvement, like real estate, like gyms, like all of those classic niches, right? Everyone that you're cold calling has probably been cold called at least once in the last month. I think maybe it was worse like 6 months ago and now it's kind of like not as bad. And unless you are sourcing very, very specific leads and you're getting these leads from some like Facebook groups or something, then these guys have probably heard that one before. But the essence of that line still actually works, okay? Because it's not about like the actual words in that sentence, it's about what that sentence actually does, right? And so if you structure it in that way where you are admitting that you are selling something straight away, then what's going to start to happen is people are going to laugh, or they are going to feel a little bit disarmed, and you might not actually feel those kind of nerves, right? You might not feel like this is such a bad thing, you know, I feel terrible for selling to this person, because this is something that a lot of beginners and even people that have established agencies, you know, they don't actually want to do this. They don't want to feel like they're selling something. They feel a bit slimy, a little bit like a dodgy salesman. And so instead of saying something along the lines of, you know, I'm going to be honest, this is a cold call, you could say something along the lines of, John, let me be completely real with you here. I am actually trying to sell you something. I'm a salesperson. It's really terrible. Something along those lines, right? But the exact sentence of, I'm going to be honest with you, this is a cold call, can I get 30 seconds or do you want to hang up now? That kind of thing, it's probably been a little bit tight. But that philosophy, if you use that and just restructure it in a different way, something which is completely unique, but it has the same sort of sentiment, then you're probably going to get a lot of success. The next thing I want to talk about is actually something I like to call fake confidence. There's so many times where I've been on cold calls in the past where maybe the call has gone in the wrong direction. Someone has said something that has kind of thrown me off a little bit. They've been a little bit rude, but you just sort of fake the confidence. You fake as if that hasn't actually bothered you. There's times where someone says something and, you know, maybe your heart rate skips a little bit, or you get a little bit nervous or something like that. And all you have to do in this point is just pretend that like it didn't happen. Just pretend like completely laugh it off. Like if someone is rude to you and you say, look, like I'm not interested right now, just spin it back around on them and say, look, I knew you were going to say that and I'm actually really, really glad that you did. And then you move on to something else, because you are going to pretend that this person saying that they're not interested or they haven't got time right now is the best thing that you've heard today, right? It's the best ever thing that the person could have said. If you just basically make it like, yes, John, I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. This is what I think, right? Or what you move on to the next part of your script. Unless you're like a complete extrovert, which I definitely am not, and you're just a complete psychopath, then you're not going to have that level of confidence, right? I'm sure you've seen salespeople that might approach you in public settings where they try to sell you something and they just have this like extreme level of confidence, this extreme level of being, you know, they're just such an extrovert, right? You can't actually naturally get that. So you need to fake it in some kind of way, and you need to just basically force yourself to do it. And the next point I want to talk about is the fact that if you are cringy, then like embrace it. Like just do not care if you sound really cringy, because you do have to put yourself out there, right? Anytime that you're going to do something where you are putting yourself in a, not a public setting, but you're just putting yourself out there to someone, it's going to be embarrassing. It's going to make you cringe. You're going to have to do something that actually makes you want to curl up inside and die, right? If you are on a cold call, then you need to bring that charisma. And a lot of people that are watching this probably don't naturally have that charisma. They're not actually that person who is going to be out there and say crazy stuff, right? But in order to be good at cold calling and to have a script that actually works, you need to go out and test these things. You need to test whether this line works, and you need to test lines that you probably wouldn't say. Use language that you probably wouldn't use. And so instead of just saying something like, oh, have you got a second, or have you got a minute, you could say something like, look, John, I know you're really busy, but you must have 30 seconds for me right now because I've got the best thing to tell you, right? Or so something stupid like that, something crazy like that. And it probably makes you cringe a little bit thinking about just speaking to random strangers, especially saying that kind of stuff. Oftentimes you just have to embrace it. You just have to fake the confidence, swallow your pride a little bit, and just accept the fact that you are going to be cringy and it will make you cringe. But the more you do it, you're going to get used to it, and it's going to feel like less and less of an actual burden to go and do that. And here's the thing, people actually respect someone who's really putting themselves out there, who has put themselves in a situation where they are the one that's pushing the conversation, they are a little bit extroverted. I think that there's definitely a sense that introverts respect extroverts, but extroverts don't really understand why introverts are that way. So even if you are being like, you know, really, really nice and you have the right script and stuff like that, but you're not like pushing the call a little bit, the other person's kind of pushing it, or they definitely won't be pushing it, to be honest with you, because obviously if you're not pushing the call, then the call will just end. But if you're not doing that, if you're not being that charismatic person and just really pushing yourself, then this person probably won't really like respect you enough to get that. Maybe they will, but if you do push the call, and if you are really open and you are really out there and you say some stuff that they probably not heard in the last few weeks, then this person is going to have respect for you, right? They're going to know that this person is calling strangers, they're putting their business on the line, they are literally putting themselves in a quite embarrassing position, something that could go really wrong for them. It's quite a risky position to do, but they are owning it, they're super confident. You have to respect that. And so people will respect it if you have this kind of attitude and you're loud and you're charismatic and you're pretty funny. The next thing is going to be emotional management. So this is something that is really the driver when it comes to anxiety. If you can't manage your emotions, if you think that every single call that you have is going to end positive, or someone says something bad to you, right, and one of the call ends negative, it doesn't really matter. If you go down that path where you're thinking that this is really terrible, I can't handle this, or you get really affected and upset and anxious by someone saying something bad to you, then you're never going to win in this game. Because even if you have a 1% conversion rate, right, and you call 200 people a day, you're going to get 2 appointments per day. That's so much. That's so many appointments. If you have 2 appointments per day, you can scale to 10K per month, right? So just having that 1% appointment booking rate is going to give you the kind of results that you're probably looking for. And so you need to understand that 99% of your calls are going to end in failure. And if they do, that's fine. That is completely fine. 10% of your calls might end up in like a really, really bad situation. People might swear at you. People might tell you to kill yourself. People might say some right horrible things. It happens all the time, okay? But if you just accept the fact that that is going to happen. If you make a deal with yourself now that I'm going to make 100 cold calls every single weekday for the next month, and it doesn't matter how many times someone swears at me, the call goes wrong, or just whatever it is, then you know to actually expect it, right? And I think a sign that someone is swearing at you and you are having these calls where things are going bad, and it might sound counterintuitive, but this is actually a pretty good sign, because if you are getting to the point where people are swearing at you, people are telling you to go away, at least you're putting yourself out there, right? It doesn't really matter how many failures you've had. It just matters how many appointments that you booked, right? It doesn't really matter if you've booked 5 appointments and you've only done 5 cold calls, but the next person has done 100 cold calls and they booked 6 appointments, right? And the difference there is obviously one person has 1 more appointment, and that's the most important thing. It doesn't really matter if you've done 5 cold calls, the other person's done 100 cold calls. At the end of the day, the only thing that we care about is the positive results. So if someone has had to deal with 94 rejections, 94 people basically swearing at them and like really horrible calls, but they've had 6 appointments more than the other person, then that's really what matters. And I would rather that than having this like perfect streak and only doing a few cold calls and booking a few appointments. And so you just have to understand that when you do get these negative responses, it's completely normal. Like, this is basically what you should expect. And if you aren't getting these negative responses, then maybe something is actually going wrong, because it is literally inevitable. Just like, the sun coming up tomorrow morning, if you cold call, you are going to get negative responses. And the last thing I want to mention is consistency. So this is like the number one thing. It does not matter if you do 100 cold calls today and then you don't cold call for another 7 days. Like, think about anyone who's ever done anything, right? Whether this is a famous athlete, whether this is a business person. If they have the most skill in the world, if they are amazing at the thing that they do, but they don't do it consistently, they don't practice consistently, they are going to get overtaken by so many mediocre people, so many average people that just wake up every day and put in the work. And so there's probably people watching this right now who actually have a lot of talent and could book a lot of appointments through cold calls. But the reason that they don't is simply because they do not wake up every day and they do not dial and they do not put the effort in. If you are someone who is so mediocre, they have no skills right now in cold calling, you can still book appointments. If you do 500 dials a day, there is no reason why you shouldn't do at least 2 or 3 appointments. And if you are able to do 2 or 3 appointments per day, then like I said before, you're going to make a 10K business out of that. You're going to make 6 figures. Like, it is a no-brainer. And so if you are not consistent with it, then all of the points that I mentioned before are kind of pointless. It doesn't matter how good you are, what kind of script you use, the words you say, or how you say them, or anything like that. If you don't show up every day and do the dials, then you're not going to book appointments. You're not going to get the thing that you're actually hoping for. So that's like the number one thing anyway. But that's all my points. If you're looking for new ways to sign clients, then click the first link in the description. It's not some kind of opt-in or anything like that. I don't really care if you do click it or not. I'm going to make 3 videos a week for like the foreseeable future. So if you just want to watch these and get a lot of the information and the learnings and the nuggets from my brain, then you can do, and I don't really care. You don't have to click it, of course. So if you did enjoy the video, then click the like button, and obviously comment if you want me to cover anything specifically, and subscribe if you want to see a few more of these. But yeah, thank you for watching to the end, and have a good day. Cheers.